Hello, and welcome to this Bitcoin Out Loud interview. My name is John Moriarty, and today I'm joined by Jerry Qian, co-founder of Bitcoin Bay, where they're currently running a Flipstarter campaign to rewrite the Badger mobile wallet. Jerry, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, and it's great to be here.
So before we talk about the campaign, could you give us a short introduction to Bitcoin Bay? So what is the organization about, and what do you do there?
We started out as a casual meetup group here in Toronto. We basically were part of a much bigger meetup group here back in the 2013, 2014 days, where even Vitalik was out there presenting his, I guess at the time it was a yellow paper for Ethereum. We created Bitcoin Bay as a meetup group, going to local bars, trying to achieve adoption back in the day, right? With all of these different bars, restaurants, different shops. And, we love beer. So go to a bar on Monday night when it's not that busy. We give them a bit of business, try to entice them with crypto. But at the end of the day, right, it's all about introducing the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, all that kind of stuff for new people in the space. We've seen a lot of people from different backgrounds, such as in the legal space, in the corporate world, somewhere in that ladder, as well as, developers and students, and even people that's close to retiring. We just basically kept going to these bars, tried to talk about new things that's been happening. And then 2017 came around with all the ICOs and all that busy stuff. So 10x, maybe 20x, more people showed up almost overnight. That's when, we really needed to get our house in order. Created a small corporation here, a small startup, just to help manage a lot of the meetups while going out to bars and restaurants and talking about crypto is fine. We still need money, income to coming in, right? That's where we started doing a bit of development work, consulting work. We organized a few hackathons after attending a few hackathons of our own. So that's where we started with BlockHack. We did do one last year, but really it started out with the local universities and colleges here in Toronto. So trying to work with the student group there, as well as some of the blockchain focused programs that's been going on. So yeah, that's basically Bitcoin Bay in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. And it's very neat that you started early with such a focus on adoption and only recently have become even a formal organization with structure and whatnot. I think that's a neat way to start, given that in 2017, everything sort of exploded. And I'm sure lots of businesses came out of the woodwork just to grab the cash that was available. But you guys had been going at it for a little while. So that's great to hear. And like I mentioned, you're running a Flipstarter campaign currently. And for anyone who hasn't heard of Flipstarter, it's basically a decentralized version of Kickstarter. So supporters can pledge Bitcoin Cash to your project, but none of the funds are actually sent unless the full funding goal is reached. Let's talk about this campaign's deliverables. And I guess in order to talk about that first, we should talk a little bit about what the Badger wallet is. So could you give us maybe a brief overview of what it is currently and maybe the tiny bit of the history?
And I probably need to go back into the history books to just double check on some of these things, but I'm pretty sure it was originally a fork of the MetaMask browser extension for Ethereum. Of course, even back then, all the different ICO projects, even though they wouldn't have a wallet to, necessarily hold on to anything, they would just rely on MetaMask and all these different exchanges and web interfaces and whatnot. So a lot of that really just ported over to the Bitcoin Cash side of things. Of course, there are some development choices. In Ethereum, for example, they don't really like to use many different addresses, like with Bitcoin and whatnot. One address, one transaction, and that kind of stuff, right? You don't want to reuse it. Whereas in Ethereum, you have all the smart contracts. This is the admin address, right? So there's a lot of different design choices implemented in these different wallets. But someone started the React Native mobile version of Badger Wallet. And, it was basically one of the first wallets to support SLP tokens. I should mention on the side, I was also looking into something called CashScript, which was created by Roscoe Callis. He and I can't remember the author of the other project, Spedman, but they spent a lot of time trying to recreate that Solidity development experience into the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. Obviously, you don't have the automated transactions with the EVM and whatnot, but when you look at it just from the outside, it's code that you can compile into like an address with a transaction and whatnot. One of the things that I was doing was basically try to put that CashScript component into the Badger wallet back in the day. We did get somewhat of a working prototype. We did get 2 contracts in there. Unfortunately, I think that was also around the time where I think it was Bitcoin.com that stopped funding for the development of it. Due to the lack of updates, eventually all of the old dependencies started breaking. I was also introducing the BCH.js library maintained by Chris Troutner and the full stack of Cash folks. While it's very, very similar to Bitbox, they do have dependency conflicts. And it was just to the point where like I had to battle all of those dependencies before even trying to, make any edits, make any modifications, and just work on the code.
Just to clarify, I mean, all that work was something that you would have had to do if you weren't rewriting the wallet, if you wanted to work with what was there. And so this campaign is basically for you to do that startup cost work, right? To rewrite the wallet so that you don't have to deal with the problems you were just describing.
Yeah. Like whenever I can get like a fresh install of the repository, it will work. But then when I try adding in these like new updated libraries, new features, CashScript in particular, after a few updates, it really just started breaking down. I started looking into the whole architecture of the code itself. And as much as BitDB and like all that is like really, really interesting to work with as a developer, it's not the best if you don't have like a nice API system like a SLP.js, right, where it does all those queries for you. It really is painful to actually just understand what's going on and just making sure like all that data is being filtered properly. So yeah, a lot of those things put together, and it's like I want to put CashScript in. It's pretty interesting. There's a few other interesting like features that I just felt like Wallet should have. But yeah, it was just to the point where you're just fighting the code at that point.
Let's talk about some of those features and any other deliverables that you've listed on the Flipstarter page. You've categorized the features you'd like to add. One, general Bitcoin Cash features, then SLP features, and like you just mentioned, CashScript features. What do you think are the most exciting ones that you're looking to add?
The ability to actually customize a transaction is something that we're looking at. Like right now, especially with the SLP transactions, for most wallets, it's just a one-to-one send. But it's very possible to, like break down those into different recipients. What we're basically looking at is, having the ability to control what kind of inputs, which is absolutely necessary for these kinds of SLP transactions anyways. Yeah, I do feel that like being able to customize the output of the transaction would be very, very interesting to work on. I'm not sure about the status of the multiple op returns in a transaction. I know the SLP team was looking into it before in terms of like trading these tokens on just one transaction. But having something like that would be like very, very easy to do once we have the ability to customize all those transactions with inputs and outputs.
Could you elaborate a little more on what it actually means to like integrate CashScript into the wallet? Does that mean that it will simply be able to like take a CashScript contract and know what to do with it and compile the stuff down into script itself? Or is it more like hard-coded individual contracts?
This is something that we actually have a working demo of, and we can probably link that release code if anyone wants to check it out. We do have the contract itself hard coded, so we have the raw contract files, right? We're obviously not going to be going on the phone and writing our own contracts and deploy it there, at least not yet.
Sure.
But what we do have is a way to deploy all of these different contracts with all their parameters, function parameters, and whatnot. So for example, on the current release with the cash script that we had on Badger, we have two contracts. One is just a regular P2 PKH, which is just sent to another address. So that's everything you would expect: the public key, the signature, and essentially that's it to unlock the transaction. We also created one that I called 38. I think the 38 was the one that had the password encoded addresses. So the idea with that is when the user is creating an instance of the contract, they're basically creating an address that has that contract script to unlock it. And so part of the unlocking process is you have to put in your own password. So it could be like, like 123 Fake Street, the Simpsons reference, or like anything else, right? You can have any sort of characters, numbers, and whatnot. And we actually integrated that specific components with the address or the key pair that's generated from the Badger wallet itself. If you imagine, like 5 people have 123 Fake Street as their password. Well, if they all have different addresses because they have different seeds, all of the subsequent encryption and whatnot will all be different. It's essentially like a very unique address that you can just create. You can create new addresses all the time just by modifying that password. That's one of the things that the Badger wallets miss is the ability to have multiple addresses supported. Obviously, there's the BCH address and the SLP address, which is actually two different sets of derivations. So you need to keep track of them both. But once you have that base key pair, you can use that as the master key for all these CashScript contracts and just create as many contracts as you want with those slight modifications and whatnot. I guess I should also mention one of the reasons why the Badger wallet didn't go for the BIP44 multiple address derivation was that it makes a lot of calls to the node servers, right? You need to query up all the addresses. You need to check up against the balance. Usually you're querying like a batch of 20 and you have to go through that until you see like a lot of zeros. Sometimes you even have like rate limits on these node servers. So you can't actually call that much, right? You'll just hit that limit. You kind of saw the CashScript as a very easy way to generate new addresses for people that care about privacy, but still not incur that rate limit due to the lack of node infrastructure.
So it still won't be, I guess, what we call an HD wallet, and instead we'll use this CashScript function to create its own addresses that use this password.
Whatever password you want to use, just create a new address every single time. The nice thing about it is that if you were able to recover, your seed, you got the same address back, and you put in the same password when you're creating these contracts, the balance, all that information will still be the same. Just like with the regular HD wallets, you just back up your seed. Here, you would back up the seed and then do a second process of re-entering those passwords that you put in.
Maybe I'll just read off a couple of the other features: create multi-recipient transaction, custom derivation path, improve UTXO selection, assign and authenticate messages. So these are things that we're talking about here that will affect users. And you've talked a little bit about cleaning up the back end, but what are the big structural changes? If you could give us maybe an overview of what you'll be changing in this rewrite.
A lot of the existing ways that the Badger wallet is tracking the balances, the UTXOs and transactions is through the BitDB system. And so that is specifically set up for the BCH balances as well as SLP token type 1, so no NFT support. With all those queries, they do a lot of repackaging of that data. We've taken a lot of that out and replaced them with simpler API calls or API calls that give you and fetch more data. Yeah, like at this point, I would say it's mostly just reworking and like just factoring out the BitDB because that's like very, very heavily integrated into the wallet as is.
To finish up, let's take a step back. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about why specifically this project is something that ended up being a passion project for you. What's getting you enthusiastic about doing this?
So when I really shifted back to Bitcoin Cash, I originally started out in Bitcoin, and then obviously, when Ethereum came out, everyone was doing Ethereum development work, and it's like, yeah, all that experience, and that's all nice, right? So when Bitcoin Cash was coming out with all this different CashScript and all these different tokens and whatnot, that kind of piqued my interest, and there's definitely potential there, right? Let me try to explain this in a bit more context.
Sure, please go ahead.
Part of the reason why I feel Ethereum really succeeded was because it's super, super easy for new people to get into Ethereum in smart contract development. It doesn't have to be super hardcore protocol level F2.0 staking, all that kind of stuff, right? You can just create a nice contract, whip up some simple JavaScript backend, front end, deploy it. It's very, very simple, right? And it gets people in. And for some reason, I guess a lot of people want to make tokens. So there's definitely demand. But it's really that ease of entry that really influence a lot of the different development paths of later products. Things such as Truffle, the development suite, to quickly and easily deploy your contracts with the test RPC or Ganache with the local testing blockchain and whatnot, to all these different tools specifically designed for NFTs. That wouldn't really be possible if you didn't have the demand coming from the mass number of what I would really say is amateur to junior, maybe intermediate level developers. Certainly not the ones that you would expect to upgrade, Ethereum or stuff like that, right? And I really think that aspect of, just opening up the development and making it easy for people really helped drive a lot of the adoption for Ethereum. Because not only did you have the demand coming from the actual real world industries and whatnot, but you also have the supply coming from all these different developers willing to learn it and learn it very, very quickly. So coming back to the BCH side of things and the Badger wallet, I took a look at the project. It was MIT licensed, I believe it still is. It's written in React Native, which is JavaScript, obviously, and that's one of the most popular languages out there for people right now. Doesn't have to be the best, but in just terms of adoption, getting these ideas out, working on these different prototypes, it's a very, very good platform to work on. So that's kind of like why I kind of decided to work on the Badger wallet. It was also very nice because CashScript, there was only the JavaScript SDK. There's no like Python SDK or Java SDK or anything like that. So it was very, very natural to integrate it with Badger. Whereas I believe if someone were to try to integrate CashScript into the Bitcoin.com wallet, I believe that's written in Java. So there needs to be like a lot more work being done to just make it compatible, right? And yeah, like even through like some of these like BCH hackathons, like a lot of people were wondering if they can just fork the Badger wallet, the Badger mobile wallet, whether it's the browser extension or the phone. Like people want a platform or like some sort of like an interface that they can actually build some like unique use case, right? It doesn't have to be super big. It's just be like fit their purpose.
And so you're saying that the value in like a working Badger wallet is something that people could fork from to create their own wallet that happens to do something. Is that basically what you're saying? That it's sort of it works as a base for anyone else trying to build a wallet?
Yeah. I have noticed quite a few people on like platforms like Fiverr and other freelancing platforms where they're straight up saying, fork Badger with our own specific token. And it's like, I don't think you taking a look at like what's written inside. It's not exactly that convenient to do. But that's why my thought. If we can create like a new updated version, right, with all these different modern APIs that people have been actually working on and maintaining, you wouldn't get all these dependency hells. You wouldn't have all these like troubleshooting things that, quite honestly, like new developers or like new-ish developers should not be like worrying.
Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me about this and also give me the context about sort of your involvement with everything. And I'm excited. I hope that people will give your Flipstarter a look so they can find it at
http flipstarter.optin.tech. I believe
and opt-in is OPTN. Is that right?
OPTN. Sorry, I think it was after the funding for the Badger wallets dropped. That's when we were like internally at Bitcoin Bay looking at potentially just taking over the project. Unfortunately, like doing free work doesn't pay, surprisingly. So, like business needs, like getting all these expenses, especially with, 2020 with the COVID situation and whatnot. Like obviously a lot of people are just trying to stay afloat, right? So that's most of the reason why like a lot of this development and whatnot, all this pace is ground to a snail pace. But yeah, in terms of the opt-in, the Badger wallet.
Any social media or anything like that? I assume that Bitcoin Bay has Twitter and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I believe so. We're not a big Twitter folks. We're more on
Understandable. LinkedIn, okay.
Yeah.
So if people want to connect with Bitcoin Bay, that might be the place to go.
Yeah, we have LinkedIn, and we have a lot of people in our WhatsApp channels as well as our Signal channels. They are more catered towards people in the Toronto space, I guess. We are very, very local that way because we don't have the budget to fly around everywhere, unfortunately. But yeah, you guys can check us out at LinkedIn. We also do have a very, very active meetup page. So if you just go to meetup.com, you will need to set the location or geography to Toronto. But yeah, just search up the Bitcoin Bay. I think we have over 4,000 people registered total. And yeah, we do bi-weekly meetups. We just had one yesterday where one of our co-founders was going through the current development ecosystem. What we're trying to do is bring the non-crypto people into the space. So however best that we feel we can do it, that's basically what we're going to go after.
Thanks very much, and best of luck with the campaign. Look forward to seeing how it turns out.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And thanks so much, John, for taking time and doing this.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And thanks to our viewers also for watching. This was an independent Bitcoin Out Loud interview made possible by viewers like you. Thanks for your contributions and for sharing this video around.